morning, good afternoon, good day, whatever is appropriate. On this show, I have to say this is a don't try this at home. Got that in there. But I'm going to show you putting tile on a cabinet and what I ran into, what I discovered, and we'll roll, title roll. All right. So the basic idea here is, and some of this might be repeated later in other videos, but I have a little cooker, a little 24-inch cooker to go in a 30-inch sink base because of space requirements. I have on that one wall where this is mounted, I have a 30-inch wall cabinet for the wall oven. I have a 30-inch sink base for the cooker. I have a 30-inch base for the counter space next to it, and that leaves the space for the refrigerator, and I don't want to get it too crammed too far over towards a door because it would be awkward to get in there. So in this case, I wanted a little backsplash up against that wall cabinet where the oven is, so I can clean that off. And there's this issue of how would you trim that out and make it look pretty, make it look halfway decent. This is an efficiency kitchen. In fact, that little cooker is a 3-burner instead of a 4-burner job. I dropped off about 5 amps off of the demand of it, but it gives me that one master eye that's got 3 little rings that gets bigger, and so it'll handle like a 10-inch pan or so fairly well, and it heats up really well. It's an auxiliary kitchen for at-home business, and so I'm not really looking for cooking a turkey dinner for 14 guests. So it just doesn't have to be that big. So the space is limited, and you get the idea. If I looked at the listing correctly, because I looked at several different cooktops, they were saying it needs to be 2 inches from combustibles, and we have that. It's 30 inches and 24 gives you 6 inches. So if we center that in that space underneath the hood above, that gives us 3 inches on each side. And of course, one side keeps going because there's nothing adjacent to it right next to the heating elements. It's just what it is. And then you have a little bit of overhang for the 12-inch above cabinets that are above there, right above that piece of countertop. So there we have it. I just want to put a little bit of tile around, but that makes me have to put tile on the wooden cabinet. So let's see how that worked out. All right. Now the type 1 adhesive is not rated to go on painted wood. It'll go on plywood, but not painted wood. And we have a little bit over there, and I put it on direct, and it may prove to be a mistake. They may pop off because it's fairly smooth. It'll go on plywood, it'll go on substrate, that's not a problem, but the paint is a problem. Now, the painted sheetrock could be a problem, but we're not going to bang much on it, and I wasn't going to put a backsplash in anyway, just going to leave it painted. But I thought afterwards I'd go ahead and put it on. We do this thousands of times, hundreds of thousands of times. It's just not quite as strong as it would be on, say, concrete or some other surface. So we're unpainted gypboard. So what we're going to do is we're going to rough up that wood here and here, and we're going to tile those areas. And to do it, I'm going to have to use that sander right there. And as you know, I'm going to commit. Once you commit, you can't quit. So we're going to do that and try to take off as much of that paint and give it a rough surface. Even if the paint stays, we're going to give it a rough surface as best we can for those areas to have something to stick a little bit better, to improve the odds. And I'm not recommending you try this, but this particular place is my house. I'm going to do it my way. And we're going to run up to the top. There is a cooktop right there, and I do have the distance required off of the gypboard just like it was, but it's going to get splattered, I'm sure, through the years. And so what we want to do is give it something to clean up a little bit nicer. Now I've done the machine work, and I've got to take some hand paper down at the bottom, get those corners a little bit where the sander couldn't get. It's pretty well taken care of. That's rough. I'll look for shiny signs that nothing's got there, and it just needs to be scratched up somewhat. Hey, appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, if you will, subscribe to the channel, either the YouTube or the Rumble channel, which this appears in. And if you can, check the notification bell or settings to make sure that you get notified when new videos are posted. Appreciate it. What did I just learn after doing the sanding? Well, these are American Woodmark cabinets. I went a lot of different cabinet routes, getting some laid out, quoted as I was fighting, trying to get a delivery time and the appliances to fit the electrical and the cabinets. And it took a while to work all those bugs out, but I ended up settling going to Home Depot because I like the kitchen designer, the layout person, the cabinet designer. They're not really designing the kitchen, they're designing cabinet layouts. So the cabinet layout person, and we started with, first question is, do you want all plywood? Because there's like a 10 or 15% premium for all plywood. And of course, I like all plywood. It sounds better than the cabinet board, not core board, what do they call it? Furniture board that they would call it. Glorified particle board type stuff, a little bit different. And so I said, sure, we'll do that. We'll go all plywood. We got a price for it, and it was multiple thousands of dollars. A little cheaper than one of my local lumber companies who does cabinet, and I checked with other cabinet companies, and some of them that were highly related were just booked out 12 or 14 weeks out, and we just couldn't get it. So we went with a big box store that took 8 weeks. So these were sold to me as being all plywood. Then we got the bill. We decided someone suggested that, well, you could just put the all plywood in the sink bases where the water might be. And I said, okay, well, that's pretty good. So let's start. We know what the worst case will be. So let's put the plywood at the sink base over where the water is, and by the refrigerator we'll do the vertical boards and that sort of thing, and anything that's abutting water. And then it didn't actually, by the time we get it ordered, they're just a hodgepodge mix. We're mostly plywood. However, the plywood is not just straight plywood. I discovered, if you look at this picture here, let's bring that up. All right, if you look right here, you see this brown layer and another brown layer, and we see that what looks like plywood in between. Well, it certainly looks like this is your plywood in between, which is your structure. I guess that's good. You also see that we don't really fit very well with this brand of cabinet. There's a void in that plywood, so it's not necessarily the greatest. I would assume from this one picture, it's not necessarily the greatest plywood there ever was, but this brown stuff turns out to be almost like this stuff right here, a pressed board fibrous type of manufactured engineered product that when you sand the paint off of it looks a lot like paper, or what you might find underneath your laminate countertop. Something like that, perhaps, a little something like that. Masonite or something along that range. So when we sanded this off, we found out that brown stuff is pretty papery. When I pried one test piece, I call it a test piece, actually it was one little square in the back corner where we had it ledgered, and we didn't really have a ledger for that very bottom row we infilled. It twisted on me because it's a little square and only had 2 of those little orange spacers, and it twisted. Next day I pried it off, and I had to use a metal putty knife to jam up between the tile and the cabinet, and it was a booger to come off. I feel pretty confident that with the sanding procedure I did, and having this kind of paper substrate after I got the paint off, after I got the slick off the cabinet, and it was roughed up with that 80 grit sandpaper, that it held pretty well. And that's sort of the moral of the story. However, don't try this at home. Why? Because I don't know what your cabinets are like, and if you sand yours down and make a mess and ruin the cabinet, I don't want you giving me one of these mean typey things saying, Dell, I ruined my cabinet because I watched your video. Well, I'm just telling you, don't do this at home, but I wanted to have tile for both heat protection and, grease and all that protection while it's in the kitchen right next to that cooker. Should be okay according to the listing if I had the right unit, but we still like to kind of dress it up. So I want to thank you for watching the video, and if you will, if this is a little bit different, I try to be a little different than the typical online producers, to give you maybe a little bit more like you're having a conversation with somebody, other than somebody trying to sell you, hey, I'm a remodeler or a contractor or something like that, trying to impress you. I want to go through this experience and demystify some of these things for a homeowner who may not be able to get that perfect, most perfect, everything in its proper place first home. We might need to get you in a home first, and you might be able to put some sweat equity in it and then build up and go up the housing ladder from there. And it's just good to be able to maintain your own home. If you have the time and a little bit of ingenuity, you can do a fairly decent job. You don't want to do a hack job on your own house. So this is kind of stuff I take you through, some of the thought processes, showing you some things that may didn't go as perfect as I wanted, so you can then contrast my homeowner work with maybe some of the professional stuff that you got out there. Anyway, appreciate you watching. Watch the other videos if you will. Appreciate you.